Well, I mean, I'd say it was the most amazing platform from which I was able to leap. You know, doing Jessica Jones was, you know, more fun than I thought it would be. You know, when I first got the script, I wasn't that familiar with comic books, and then I got sent the graphic novel of Alias, and I just got completely swept up in it. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. The artistry, the writing, the character, it was just brilliant. And I absolutely loved bringing her to life and the psychology of that, which was really, I guess, a huge part of the sort of my attraction to Madam Web, because there are many similarities in that. Very, very different, because you don't want to make the same thing twice. She's a very different character to Jessica, but there are some similarities, and I felt that what Madam Web offered was the opportunity to sort of like embrace a psychological thriller within the Marvel world.
We talked a lot about, you know, how this film was leaning more towards being a psychological thriller than a, you know, your kind of typical superhero film. It's way more grounded in reality, and it's you know, we talked a lot about the ways that we could make that work, and how we could, you know, we didn't use a lot of blue screen. It was a lot of practical sets, only a few moments of blue screen and CGI in the movie. So it was a lot of discussing how we would make this feel very different from what you've seen before in Marvel.
I think what was exciting was we were sort of given this opportunity to create a whole new world. We were taking a character and we were figuring out what their origin story might be, and where did they come from and how did they get to be who they are now. So in many ways the comic book was, again, this amazing sort of Bible of reference for us to go to and call back to, and what were the character traits and what were her abilities and her skills, you know, and then figure out and form an idea and a story of how to bring that to life and how to bring her to life and to set her up of where she might be.
The most important thing for me with Madam Web was to really make her feel grounded and real, and to have her human side just as amplified as her sort of supernatural side. I really want young women to be able to connect with the power in themselves through her, and so it was important to me that she had a really rich inner world.
Well, I remember 2003, because I'm old, and apparently now vintage. Apparently it's vintage 2003, and of course I lived that period, and it was sort of the time when I was in my sort of 20s, 30s, so, you know, a very exciting time, I remember it. So it was really fun to bring some of that back, but I hope that, I didn't want it to be full on just 2003. I wanted to have a timeless feel to it. There was a quality to it. We actually started in 1973, and there were definitely 1970s references that we brought into 2003. Cassie's jacket is based on a vintage 1970s jacket that our brilliant costume designer Nyla Dixon found, and I think it was like the night before we started filming, or 2 days before we started filming, we tried on this jacket, we thought it looked great, and I said it would be brilliant if it was red, and our amazing tailors turned around that red jacket, but based on an original 1973 vintage. So it was really exciting to take elements and bring it into the world and embrace 2003, the flip phones, and be able to tell a story where you didn't have to rely on technology. It was only Ezekiel that gets hold of the technology, and that sort of liberated us in many ways from, you know, having to rely on smartphones, and, you know, we could be in our own bubble, as it were.
Well, it's funny. 2003 is such a funny time to set the movie in, but it makes sense for the place that all these women are in their lives, and it's just a very specific sort of time. Music-wise, you know, there was that Britney song that came out, and Beyonce album, and there's a huge Beyonce poster in the film, and the fashion and everything was, you know, for me that doesn't feel very long ago, but I guess for, like, you know, young people, that time vintage, like 2003 is vintage, which is funny to me.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big challenge, right? Because Cassie is very passive in a way, and all this stuff is coming at her in a quite sort of fast, you know, velocity, hurtling towards her. And obviously what she saw didn't necessarily play out, or she had to prevent it from playing out. So there would be many different versions, and as with filming, you have to sort of be economical and shoot in one direction and then another direction. So it was an awful lot. I think my notes on the train sequence were more notes than I've ever had on directing a scene than any other scene in my life. It was like so many notes and so much detail in terms of what she was seeing, when the jacket was on and off, which Ezekiel we had in the frame, you know, when the girls was passive, when the girls were being thrown in the air, you know, all this amazing sort of stuff. So it was a real challenge, and sort of like, I think I was terrified about that sequence, but I think it's probably one of my favorites as a result, because it was so hard to do, so challenging to do, and, you know, therefore, you know, I think we pulled it off just about all right.
No, I didn't. I never thought I would be a superhero. But I really wasn't thinking about that or planning on it. But when I read this script, I really loved how powerful this young woman's mind was. So I felt like it was something that I'd like to do.
I think we tried to put some little Easter eggs in the movie. I think it's always fun to do that. The comic books themselves were a huge inspiration and reference. And as you say, you know, Madam Web was introduced in 1980, you know, so there might be a few references to that particular comic in there somewhere, if you look out for it, a few references. But yeah, we tried to pepper in Easter eggs wherever it was. But obviously this is a new world and a new character, and I wanted to make sure she was allowed the space to sort of live and breathe and become her own thing.
I don't know what's going to happen with Spider-Man. Who knows? Who knows what the future holds?